They had 5 cigarettes going, also a joint and a 1.5 foot high hookah brimmed with cannabis above and 3.2 beer below. A pale blue smaze hung around the high ceiling. The 6 who lived there were lotused around 4 unfolded pages of the San Antonio Express News, stemming and seeding several resinous pounds of pot. 3 of them still in uniform, fatigues at least, just back from a day at Special Training Detachment, or as it was emblazoned on their helmet liners, STD. A sequence of letters not having in 1971 the resonance or implication they have today. It was a holding company for the hopeless and the hopeful, American soldiers, that is, such as they were. Also in uniform, person number 7. Call him Sergeant Blinks. He'd lost an eye in Vietnam, and he was their dealer, their source, and he liked them more than seemed reasonable or right, and promised them each a free nickel bag for their custodial work. And even as they worked, he was strapped off and shooting up with one of the good sterile syringes they'd copped from Central Medical Supply. That was why he liked them, they figured. Come home a junkie, he seemed happy to be here, since they were to have been medics and had stolen those syringes long before Porter developed the bedwetting problem, and Denton and Spiegel decided they were queers, gay in those days, meaning only excessively happy. And before the rest of them pleaded not merely ordinary fear, but conscientious objection. They said they meant it, in other words. Even as they wondered how killing Nixon could be anything but right. When they could talk at all, they had those kinds of conversations. They thought about what was wrong and more wrong. Blinks sat in the only chair, Spike withdrawn now, head lolled off to one side, a kind of fractured baleen of spittle lip to lip across his open mouth. The pot was so sticky, they each paused now and then to work the goo of it up and off each digit and rolled it into black boluses they dropped in a communal coffee cup. Finger hash, it was called. And they couldn't take their eyes off it, redolent, drop-deadly, and very much desired. It would be, at the end of their stem and seed parsing, what Sergeant Blinks offered in exchange for his lark. If he could skin pop them all with a drop or 2 of his horse in the backs of their 6 left, and mostly white hands, it was theirs. A long pause then. How bad could it be, they wondered, meaning how good, meaning they wanted what they wanted and didn't want what they might come to want more or too much of, but what was too much, and what did they really want after all? Well, they wanted that cup of finger hash, enough that no one said no. So happily, Blinks rigged up 5 new times, syringes from the dozens in the stolen box, a couple cc's from the bent-back cooking spoon, and then, in between each of the 4 metacarpal ridges across the backs of their newly brave and unheroic hands, he eased so gently, so skillfully, the needle's slender bevel just under the skin, and made a series of blisters there, wens, tear-shaped sebaceous cysts of the same stuff he had not long before plunged a pistonful of into his vein. As per his instructions, they flexed their fists and slapped the dabbled backs of their hands with their undabbled others, and felt come rushing up their arms a kind of other coming, overcoming smolder. Wilson, the one black man among them, studied his biceps and said again and again, "Hot fudge, hot fudge." It was like entering a large, perfect mouth. a kind of woman wetness. They were up to their shoulders in their necks and ears until there wasn't anything to say, and even if there had been, no mechanism by which to say it. But it didn't last long, and as far as they would ever know, none of them did it again, and Blink left them the nickel bag and the sticky stuff, and Spiegel boiled up the stems and made iced tea from the water. They were so wrecked they forgot to eat and sat on the sun-busted front porch for hours, watching swallows cruise for moths. They even stood to salute at sundown and faced up the block to the base's back gate at Taps, and for some reason this was not at all ironic. Tra-la, they would not kill, alas, they would not die. They couldn't see the base flag going down, but the gloaming coming on from the east promised another day when everything would be better. There were bats coming out, hunting. America, someone said. Beautiful country. And it was. As a voodoo, get you back to me tool, this Hank's thankless task is vast. A head down to the ground impossibility, possibly, since what I'm thinking of is your toe pad pinknesses too, your soup hots and rounds, the fine and perfect poundage of you on my paws, the very cause and problem I moan for and bemoan, the absence of, for love, above the head this reddish coil once lavishly wore. There's an air so far away, it's sad for me to even think the same sun's rays play where it was and do to you what I would do if I were there or you were here. Still, some thrills remembered do resemble thrills one hopes, and the ropes of it that gently fell around me bound me so well, no hell of miles can defile this dream I dream. I mean the anyway DNA I can find of you. I mean the home of bones and blood that holds the whole of you, and which this fizzed up missive means to conjure, missy, my world in a curl girl, this man, oh man, half man I am when you're gone. This is called While You Were Out of Town. While you were out of town, I left the man with the steam cleaner all alone in the house and watched from my shack as he poured bucket by bucket the gray, brackish water that had rinsed our comings and goings from the carpet. That morning, I had moved all the small items, hassock, coffee table, magazine rack, and more to the hardwood and tile to make way for his work. Also the two end tables, the floor lamp, everything one man could lift by himself, even the dog's toys and the window shade ropes. And I would have noticed, had it been on the floor, your black lacy bra hanging by a strap from a dresser handle, but I'm sorry, there it was after he left, still hanging, though I noticed it hung this time by the left shoulder instead of the right, as though it had fallen as he cleaned the alley next to your side of the bed, that trouble spot where the dog sleeps. Yes, that's it, I'm sure. It had fallen, and he, in one professional motion, had put it back as I had put it back just the night before, having noted, for whatever reason one might note such a thing, even before I held it to my lips and took in the rich, cool scent of your absence, which seemingly negligent strap it dangled by. Thank you very much.